Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen, her hands trembling as she processed what the data was telling her. The mysterious illness patterns she'd been tracking for the past decade weren't random at all. They were experiments, carefully designed and implemented across different populations around the globe. The whistleblower's data package had arrived 3 days ago. At first, she thought it was another prank. There had been many since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Council 5 years ago. But as she dug deeper into the files, cross-referencing them with her own research, a horrifying picture emerged. The Galactic Council, that supposedly benevolent organization that had welcomed Earth into the galactic community, had been using humans as test subjects for centuries. They had been here long before they officially revealed themselves, conducting biological weapons research on an unsuspecting population. "Director Williams needs to see this immediately," she muttered, gathering her tablets and backup drives. As she hurried through the CDC's corridors, her mind raced through the implications. The cancer clusters in South America, the mysterious genetic disorders in Eastern Europe, the unexplained immunity variations in Central Africa. They were all connected. The emergency meeting was called within hours. Representatives from major health organizations worldwide gathered virtually, their faces grim as they reviewed the evidence. The whistleblower, a junior researcher from the Council's Biological Research Division, had provided irrefutable proof. Complex genetic markers in the affected populations matched known Council bioweapon signatures. "They've been treating us like lab rats," Dr. Williams said, his voice tight with anger. "Every major disease outbreak in the last 3 centuries, they've been behind most of them, studying our responses, documenting our recovery patterns." The UN Security Council convened in an unprecedented closed-door session. As humanity's leaders debated their response, a transmission arrived from the Galactic Council. They had detected the data breach and wished to address any concerns. The Council's high speaker, a tall crystalline being called Vertax, appeared on the main screen. His translated voice carried what humans had learned to recognize as condescension. "We understand you have questions about our previous research initiatives on your world," Vertax began. "While we acknowledge some procedures may seem concerning from your primitive perspective, we assure you they were necessary for cataloging your species' biological responses. This data has proven invaluable in advancing medical science for numerous council races." The UN Secretary-General, Elena Rodriguez, stood to address the alien diplomat. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could see the rage in her eyes. "You experimented on our children. You introduced diseases to study our suffering. This is a violation of every ethical principle we recognize." Vertax's crystalline form shimmered what humans had learned was their equivalent of dismissive laughter. "Ethics. Your species still wages war against itself. You pollute your own planet. You lack the perspective to judge council matters. This discussion is closed." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Then, one by one, the world's leaders began to speak. For the first time in human history, they found themselves completely united in purpose. "They think we're primitive," the Chinese premier said softly. "They think we'll accept this and move on. Then they know nothing about humanity." President Okafor of Nigeria responded. "We gathered here as representatives of individual nations. We will leave as humanity's first true unified council." As the meeting continued into the night, no one noticed Dr. Chen quietly downloading the whistleblower's complete data package. No one saw her sending encrypted copies to every major research facility on Earth. The Council had given humanity the tools of their own destruction. They just didn't know it yet. The game was about to change, and humanity was done playing by the Council's rules. 3 months after the Council's dismissal, the abandoned alien research facility in Antarctica revealed its secrets. Dr. Marcus Wong held up a strange device, his breath forming clouds in the cold air of the underground chamber. Around him, teams of scientists carefully documented and cataloged everything the Council researchers had carelessly left behind. "They really thought we'd never find this place," he said to Dr. Chen, who was photographing strange markings on the walls. Their arrogance is our advantage. The facility was one of 17 discovered worldwide. Each had been carefully hidden using technology that bent light and confused satellite imaging. But there was one thing the Council hadn't counted on. Human children could see them. Something about young human eyes could pierce their camouflage technology. All it took was listening to decades of dismissed stories about strange buildings that adults couldn't see. In Washington, D.C., the newly formed Human Unity Council was meeting. Representatives from every nation sat together, their previous conflicts forgotten in the face of a common enemy. The Council's betrayal had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy couldn't: true global cooperation. The reverse engineering of their technology is proceeding faster than expected, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the Global Science Initiative. Their basic computing systems are actually quite primitive compared to our quantum computers. They relied too heavily on their psychic crystals. Around the table, heads nodded. The Council species had evolved along paths that favored biological and crystal-based technology. They had dismissed Earth's primitive digital approach. Now that oversight would cost them dearly. At a hidden facility in the Sahara, engineers were already testing the first human-made version of Council gravity drives. The original designs required the psychic abilities that all Council species possessed. But humans, with their primitive digital technology, had found a way to replicate these functions with advanced AI systems. They're still not watching us closely, General Sarah O'Connor reported to the Unity Council. Their orbital satellites pass over major cities, but they ignore our desert and polar facilities. They don't think we can progress this quickly. The Council's surveillance showed exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Nations still arguing, militaries still conducting their usual exercises, business continuing as usual. The surface of human civilization remained unchanged. But beneath it, in underground facilities and hidden laboratories, humanity was making leaps that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. The whistleblower's data had included something else: complete technical specifications for Council technology. They had included it as reference material for their experiments, never imagining humans could understand it, let alone improve upon it. Their latest survey suggests we're at least a century away from developing basic antimatter containment, reported Agent Lai Wei, head of counterintelligence. They don't realize we cracked it last week. The Unity Council chamber filled with quiet laughter. The representatives had learned to find humor in the Council's constant underestimation of humanity. Their enemy's greatest weakness was their unshakable belief in their own superiority. In orbit, Council observation ships continued their routine patrols, their crews bored with watching what they considered a primitive world. Their sensors showed normal power readings, normal radiation levels, normal everything. They didn't detect the quantum fields hiding massive underground facilities. They didn't notice the subtle changes in Earth's communication patterns. They didn't realize that humans had already compromised their observation networks. As Dr. Chen reviewed the latest test results from the Antarctic facility, she allowed herself a small smile. The Council thought they had given humanity a harsh lesson in galactic politics. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed: a reason to unite, and the tools for its revenge. The countdown to humanity's response had begun, and the Council didn't even know it was ticking. Maria Santos walked through the massive underground facility in Brazil, her footsteps echoing off the steel walls. Around her, thousands of crystalline structures pulsed with a faint blue light. These weren't just ordinary crystals. They were quantium, the most valuable mineral in the galaxy. How long before they notice? She asked Dr. Rodriguez, who was monitoring the storage units. They won't, he replied with a confident smile. The Council's geological surveys only scanned the surface. They never thought to look deeper because they believed we couldn't mine below 2 kilometers. The discovery had been accidental. While studying the Council's abandoned research facilities, scientists had found that Earth was the galaxy's richest source of quantium. The Council had known this, of course. It was one of the reasons they had chosen Earth for their experiments. What they didn't know was that humans had found a way to detect and extract it. In the Unity Council chamber, holographic displays showed similar facilities across the globe. Australia, Canada, Russia, South Africa, everywhere. Humans were quietly stockpiling the one resource the Council couldn't live without. Their ships are already experiencing problems, reported Admiral Chen, showing footage of a Council vessel struggling to maintain orbit. Without regular quantum crystal replacement, their gravity drives become unstable. The Council's entire civilization depended on quantum. Their ships, their communications, their weapons, everything needed these crystals to function. They had always assumed their supply was secure, never imagining that their primitive test subjects would discover the truth. Latest intelligence suggests 3 Council species are already facing technological failures, Agent Lai Wei announced. They're blaming pirates and industrial accidents, but we all know the real reason. The Council's carefully maintained surveys showed Earth's quantum deposits exactly where they had always been, untouched, waiting to be harvested when the Council decided humans were ready for the technology. The complex holographic camouflage systems hiding the mining operations were based on the Council's own technology, modified and improved by human engineers. In orbit, a Council mining survey ship performed its monthly scan. Its crew didn't notice anything unusual about the results. They couldn't detect the massive underground storage facilities or the new mineral processing plants hidden inside mountains. Their own arrogance had made them blind. They're starting to fight among themselves, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, reviewing intercepted Council communications. The smaller species are accusing the larger ones of hoarding quantum reserves. The Council can't explain why their stockpiles are running low. The plan was working perfectly. Humanity had learned from its own history. Control the resources, and you control everything. The Council's mighty civilization was built on quantum, and Earth had quietly become the master of that foundation. In the depths of the Brazilian facility, Maria checked the latest production figures. The storage units now held enough quantum to power a fleet 10 times the size of the Council's. But more importantly, they had enough to make the Council's existing fleet useless. Message from Unity Command. Her tablet blinked. Operation Resource Control is entering Phase 2. She smiled, remembering the Council's dismissive attitude just months ago. They had called humans primitive, incapable of understanding advanced technology. Now, humanity was about to show them just how wrong they were. In the coming weeks, Council ships would begin falling from the sky. Their communications would fail. Their weapons would stop working. And they would never suspect that the primitive humans they had experimented on were the cause of their civilization's collapse. The Council was about to learn that humanity's revenge wasn't just about violence. It was about bringing down an empire without firing a single shot. Alex Kumar sat in front of a wall of holographic screens, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. Around him, in the underground Cyber Command Center beneath the Indian Ocean, hundreds of other hackers worked in similar setups. They called themselves the Digital Liberation Front, but they were really humanity's secret weapon. Another firewall down, he announced, watching as the alien security systems crumbled. Council Security Grid Section 17 is now under our control. The Council had always believed their quantum networks were unhackable. They were right, in a way. Their networks couldn't be hacked using their own technology. But human computers work differently. While Council systems relied on quantum crystalline matrices that required psychic input, human digital systems could slip through their defenses like ghosts. They still haven't detected our presence, reported Maya Patel, his team leader. She pointed to a status screen showing Council network activity. They're too busy trying to figure out why their ships keep losing power to notice we're inside their command systems. The Council's communication networks were massive, connecting thousands of worlds through quantum tunnels. It had taken humans months to understand how they worked, but once they did, the invasion was surprisingly easy. Council security was designed to stop attacks from other psychic species. They had no defense against Earth's primitive binary code. In the main control room, Dr. Chen watched the progress with satisfaction. "How many systems have we compromised?" she asked the operations team. 87% of their civilian networks and 63% of military channels, responded Captain Rodriguez. Their encryption is failing faster than expected. They never imagined someone would attack them this way. On the main screen, they could see Council ships trying to communicate using backup systems, but those systems had been compromised months ago. Every message they sent, every command they gave, passed through human-controlled networks first. "Show me their internal communications," Dr. Chen requested. The screens filled with translated Council messages. Their leadership was panicking. Ships weren't responding to commands. Defense systems were activating randomly, and no one could explain why. Urgent. Colonial defense grid experiencing unexplained shutdowns. Require immediate assistance. Warning. Central Command unable to verify ship positions. Navigation systems compromised. Alert. Security protocols failing across all sectors. Unknown cause. Alex couldn't help but smile as he read the messages. The Council had spent centuries thinking they were superior, but they had never truly understood humanity's greatest strength: adaptation. While they had stayed committed to their crystal technology, humans had developed countless different ways to process information. "Time to move to Phase 2, Dr. Chen announced. "Begin selective data release." Across the galaxy, Council databases began releasing information about their own corrupt practices. Evidence of their experiments on Earth was just the beginning. Records showed they had done the same to dozens of other species, always hiding behind their advanced technology and political power. In the Cyber Command Center, Alex initiated a new program, beginning shutdown of Council military communication networks in 3, 2, 1. Across the galaxy, Council warships suddenly lost contact with their command centers. Their mighty fleets, scattered across thousands of systems, were now cut off and blind. The panic in their communications was almost visible. Message from Unity Command. Maya's screen flashed. "Operation Digital Storm is complete. Prepare for final phase." The Council was about to discover that they had overlooked humanity's most powerful weapon. Not our weapons or our resources, but our ability to turn their own technology against them. Their perfect, unhackable network had become their prison, and humanity held the key. Admiral Sarah O'Connor stood on the bridge of the HSS Revenge, humanity's first starship built using modified Council technology. Through the view screen, she watched as the Council's mighty invasion fleet approached Earth's orbit, 5,000 ships strong. They thought they were coming to punish humanity. Instead, they were flying into a trap. "All defense systems ready," reported Captain James Chen. "The Council fleet is following exactly the attack pattern their training manuals predicted." That was the thing about the Council species. They never adapted. For millennia, they had used the same tactical protocols, the same battle formations, the same strategies. Why change what had always worked? They never imagined that humans had spent months studying their military documents, learning every move they would make. "Their lead ships are entering the outer defense grid," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. "They still haven't detected our modifications to their sensor systems." The Council fleet moved with perfect precision, exactly as their ancient battle doctrines demanded. Their formations were beautiful, their coordination flawless, and completely predictable. "Send the signal," Admiral O'Connor ordered. Across Earth's orbit, hidden defense platforms activated. These weren't the primitive missile launchers or laser arrays the Council expected. These were their own weapons, stolen from their abandoned research bases, improved by human engineers, and turned against them. The Council fleet's first sign of trouble came when their frontline ships suddenly lost power. Their own command signals, passed through Earth's compromised networks, had triggered shutdown codes in their engines. "Council fleet showing signs of confusion," Captain Chen reported with a smile. They're trying to switch to secondary command channels. But those channels had been compromised months ago. Every backup system, every emergency protocol the Council ships tried to use had been studied and countered by human strategists. In the Council's command ship, High Admiral Vertax watched in horror as his perfect formation fell apart. Ships were dropping out of formation, their crews reporting system failures across all sectors. The humans were supposed to be defenseless, their technology centuries behind Council standards. How are they doing this? He demanded. They're primitives. They shouldn't even be able to detect our ships. The answer came in the form of a transmission from Earth. Admiral O'Connor's face appeared on their main screen, her expression calm and professional. This is Admiral Sarah O'Connor of the Human Unity Forces. Your ships are now under our control. You have two options: immediate surrender, or watch as we demonstrate what your own weapons can do when properly modified. To demonstrate her point, one of the Council's own destroyer ships suddenly turned its weapons on an adjacent cruiser. The shot wasn't meant to destroy, just to prove they could. Impossible. Vertax shouted. Our systems cannot be controlled remotely. Our security. Your security was designed to stop attacks from species like yours. O'Connor interrupted. You never considered that our primitive technology might work differently. Every hour you spent studying us, we spent days studying you. We know every move you'll make before you make it. In Earth orbit, more Council ships lost power. Their crews watched helplessly as their own defense systems turned against them, targeting engines and weapons, but carefully avoiding life support. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Message from Unity Command. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Operation Tactical Reversal is successful. All Council ships are either disabled or surrendering. Admiral O'Connor allowed herself a small smile. The Council had expected to find a primitive species cowering before their superior technology. Instead, they found their own weapons and tactics used against them with a precision they never thought possible. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history learning to fight smarter, not stronger. In the Great Council chamber on Centauri Prime, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood before the assembled representatives of 500 alien species. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed evidence of centuries of Council crimes, not just against Earth, but against dozens of primitive species. For too long, the Council has hidden its true nature, she declared, her voice translated into 50 different languages. Today that ends. Today, you see the truth. The chamber erupted in chaos as species after species recognized their own worlds in the data, their own people in the experiment logs. The Proxians saw their genetic plague of 3000 BCE. The Arcturus Coalition found records of neural experiments on their ancestors. The Sirius Confederation discovered the truth about their natural disasters. Dr. Chen, standing beside the ambassador, activated the next phase of the presentation. These are not just historical records, she explained. Many of these programs are still active. Some of you are being experimented on right now. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity had spent months organizing the stolen data, creating clear links between Council research programs and unexplained tragedies across the galaxy. The Council's own records convicted them. The humans lie, High Speaker Vertax shouted from his crystal podium. They fabricated these records. The records are genuine, interrupted Kittel, the Proxian chief archivist. These carry our ancient encryption marks. No one could fake these. More voices joined in. The Arcturus scientists confirmed their authenticity. Syrian data experts verified the timestamps. Species after species found proof of the Council's crimes against their people. We were not the first, Ambassador Rodriguez continued, but we intend to be the last. Earth now possesses the Council's technology, their resources, and their secrets. We could use this power as they did, to dominate and exploit. Instead, we offer something else. Alliance. On the massive screen, new data appeared. plans for sharing advanced medical technology, clean energy systems, and defense capabilities. But more importantly, evidence of how the Council had been manipulating member species against each other, keeping them weak and dependent. The Proxy-Syrian War of 2987. Dr. Chen highlighted the relevant documents. Engineered by the Council to test biological weapons. The Arcturus trade collapse. Deliberately caused to study economic stress responses. The chamber, which had been loud with angry voices, fell silent. Centuries of conflicts, disasters, and natural catastrophes suddenly made sense. The Council hadn't just been experimenting on them, it had been playing them against each other. In the back of the chamber, representatives from younger Council species began removing their Council insignias. The Draconians, themselves victims of Council experiments just centuries ago, were the first to walk over to the Earth delegation. "We stand with Earth," their ambassador declared. "No more experiments. No more lies." Others followed. Species that had been enemies for generations found themselves united by the revelation of shared victimhood. The Council's carefully maintained power structure was crumbling before their eyes. "This is our offer," Ambassador Rodriguez concluded. "Join us in building a new galactic society. One based on cooperation, not domination. On mutual growth, not exploitation." High Speaker Vertax watched helplessly as more species pledged themselves to Earth's cause. His own security forces were deserting, their loyalty broken by evidence of how the Council had manipulated even them. In less than one day, humanity had done what no species had managed in 10,000 years. They had broken the Council's power not through superior force, but through the simple act of revealing the truth. The galaxy would never be the same, and the Council was about to learn that their greatest mistake wasn't experimenting on humans. It was giving them a reason to look deeper into the darkness of galactic politics. The Grand Hall of Reconciliation, built in record time using combined human and alien technology, floated in Earth's orbit. Inside, representatives from over 500 species gathered to witness something unprecedented. The Council leadership on trial for their crimes. High Speaker Vertax and his inner circle sat in the center, their crystalline forms dulled with stress. They had lost everything. Their fleet, their authority, and most importantly, their air of superiority. Around them, evidence of their crimes played on floating holographic displays. "The Council has existed for 10,000 years, Dr. Sarah Chen addressed the assembly. In that time, they conducted experiments on 3,247 species. We were simply the ones who caught them." The human delegation had spent weeks preparing for this moment. They didn't want revenge. They wanted justice, and more importantly, they wanted change. "We've discovered something interesting in the Council's own research," Admiral O'Connor continued, stepping forward. "Every species they experimented on showed remarkable advancement after surviving their tests. They thought this proved their methods were beneficial. What it really proved was something else entirely." On the main display, data from thousands of worlds appeared, species after species showing incredible progress after facing near-extinction events. The Council had seen it as validation. Humanity saw it differently. "You didn't make us stronger," Ambassador Rodriguez declared. "You showed us what we already had inside us. Every species in this room has survived your worst. Now imagine what we can do together, without your interference." The evidence was undeniable. The Council's own records showed that their interference had actually slowed galactic progress. Their tight control had prevented natural cooperation and innovation between species. "Humanity has developed technology that surpasses Council capabilities in several areas," Dr. Chen explained. "Not because we're special, but because we were free to think differently. Imagine what all of us could achieve together." She gestured, and new holographs appeared. Human innovations in digital technology, medical research, and space travel. Things the Council had declared impossible, achieved in months because humans hadn't known they were impossible. "We propose a new structure," Ambassador Rodriguez announced. "Not a council that rules from above, but a federation of equals. Every species represented. Every voice heard. No more experiments. No more secrets. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had been enemies under council rule found themselves agreeing for the first time. The younger council races, led by the Draconians, were the first to formally support the proposal. But what about them? Someone asked, pointing to Vertax and his inner circle. What happens to the council leadership? Ambassador Rodriguez smiled. We considered many punishments, but we decided on something they would find far worse than death or imprisonment. They will live among us, powerless, and watch as we succeed where they failed. They will see species they deemed primitive build a better galaxy than they ever could. Vertax's crystalline form shuddered. The human was right, watching from the sidelines, as their carefully maintained order was dismantled would be the worst punishment imaginable. We put it to a vote, Dr. Chen announced. Who supports the formation of the Galactic Federation? The chamber lit up as species after species signaled their agreement. Former enemies found themselves on the same side. Races that had been manipulated into hating each other discovered common ground. In less than an hour, 10,000 years of council rule officially ended. A new era was beginning, led by the very species they had tried to keep down. And humanity, the primitive species they had so gravely underestimated, would help guide the way. The galaxy was about to learn what could be achieved when species worked together instead of being forced apart. The age of the Council was over. The age of cooperation had begun. 5 years after the Council's fall, Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Massive space elevators reached into the sky from every continent. Ships from 1,000 worlds filled the orbital lanes, but the biggest changes weren't visible from the ground. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her new office in the Federation Medical Center, looking at a hologram of the galaxy. Colored points of light showed medical breakthroughs spreading between worlds like a beautiful constellation of progress. Another cure found, her assistant reported. The Proxians and Syrians working together discovered how to reverse the genetic damage from the Council's old experiments. 3 billion people will be helped by this. This was humanity's true victory, not the defeat of the Council, but what came after. Where the Council had forced species apart, Earth had brought them together. Where the Council had hidden knowledge, the Federation shared it freely. In orbit, Admiral O'Connor commanded the new Federation Defense Fleet, but unlike the Council's military, this fleet existed to protect, not control. Ships of mixed species crews patrolled trade routes, rescued stranded vessels, and helped developing worlds. The former Council races are adapting well, she told Ambassador Rodriguez during their weekly meeting. Their crystal technology, combined with our digital systems, has created something entirely new. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. The truth of this could be seen everywhere. In laboratories across the galaxy, scientists from different species worked side by side, combining their unique perspectives to solve problems the Council had declared unsolvable. Worlds that had once been enemies now traded freely, sharing resources and knowledge. Vertax, the former High Speaker, watched it all from his small apartment in New Geneva. As part of his punishment, he was required to attend every major Federation breakthrough announcement. Today, he watched as a team of humans, Draconians, and Proxians revealed they had found a way to terraform dead worlds into paradise planets. Impossible, he whispered, just as he had whispered 1,000 times before. But humanity had taught the galaxy that impossible was just another word for not tried hard enough. In the Great Federation Assembly Hall, once the site of the Council's trial, Ambassador Rodriguez addressed the gathered representatives. The hall had grown. Now nearly 1,000 species held membership, including several the Council had deemed too primitive for contact. 5 years ago, we stood here and promised a new beginning, she said. Today, we can say we kept that promise. The galaxy is not perfect. We still have challenges to face, problems to solve, but we face them together, as equals. The proof was in the numbers. Trade had increased by 4,000%. Scientific breakthroughs happened almost daily. Worlds that had been stuck at the same technological level for millennia were advancing rapidly, freed from the Council's artificial restrictions. Dr. Chen, watching the speech from her office, smiled as she remembered those first days of discovery, when they had learned of the Council's experiments. What had started as a quest for revenge had become something far more important, a revolution in how species could work together. In a secure facility deep beneath Geneva, the last remnants of the Council's rule lay gathering dust. The old weapons, the biological samples, the tools of oppression, all carefully preserved as a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. But above them, in the light of Earth's sun, ships from across the galaxy came and went freely. Their crews represented dozens of species working together, learning from each other, growing stronger through cooperation rather than competition. Humanity had not just survived the Council's experiments, they had turned that crucible into a forge for something better. The galaxy had learned that true strength comes not from domination, but from the simple willingness to reach out and help others rise alongside you. The age of the Council was over. The age of humanity, and all species working together, had just begun.